Former President of the African National Congress, Thabo Mbeki, has issued a warning that rising unrest in South Africans could lead to a revolution akin to the Arab Spring. Mbeki has launched a stinging attack on President Cyril Ramaphosa, suggesting that the ruling party has no strategy to deal with the country's problems. He claimed that the ANC's leadership has failed to revitalise the organisation and to deliver crucial services to citizens. Well, joining me now to further discuss this, well, let's take a listen to what the former president had to say first.
Correctly, the movement says that we're faced with challenges of unemployment, of poverty, inequality. Very correct. In terms of our commitment to serve the people, we have to address those issues. But the fact of the matter, comrades, is that as I'm standing here, as we're sitting, all of us here, we do not have an agreed national plan to address these challenges. We don't have it. There is no national plan to address these challenges of poverty, unemployment, inequality. It doesn't exist. I'm saying to serve the people requires that we address this.
Well, joining me now to discuss this further is political analyst Professor Sethulego Matebesi. Prof, thank you so much for your time. Well, you would have heard the bite there by the former president, scathing remarks outlining the fact that government doesn't have a plan to deal with some of the socioeconomic challenges that were behind the July unrest that we saw last year, but also raising concerns of, this turning into a revolt, an uprising similar to the Arab Spring. Your thoughts on what the former president had to say?
Hi, good morning, Ayanda, and good morning, South Africans. A very sober speech delivered by the former president of the African National Congress. And what is very encouraging about the speech is that it is coming from someone who is within the ranks of the African National Congress, because sometimes outsiders like us are being labeled as counter-revolutionaries. But, this is a sober assessment of the situation within the African National Congress, within government, that there is no plan. And that in itself is a recipe for disaster. We have already seen South Africa in terms of crime, combating crime. It's a huge failure in doing that. We are always reactive, but also if you look at the current national energy crisis, when President Cyril Ramaphosa ascended to the position of presidency, he made several promises. And where are we now, 2, 3, 4 years down the line? And yet we are still battling to deal with the same trend. And I think on the basis of that, he made those sober assessments, which I know will not ring a bell with the current leadership of the African National Congress, because it seems as if their priorities is somewhere else, and that is to get, once again, something that President Thabo Mbeki, also former president, alluded to. It's almost like the focus is on being elected during the next elective conference of the ANC.
And I think, Prof, I wonder if you would agree, but I think adding to the weight of the former president's remarks is the fact that this is an individual, a high-profile figure, who pretty much allowed himself to enter a space of political obscurity during former President Jacob Zuma's tenure as state president, emerged from that obscurity, seemingly wanting to throw his weight behind the organization's renewal efforts under the leadership of President Cyril Ramaphosa. And so one would say that it's almost doubly scathing that this particular individual is now, speaking truth to what's really happening in South Africa and what's really happening within the governing party.
You should just look at the level of trust that people in general have in government. if you've got somebody like that who, and I've seen it numerous times, where people will, even our leaders of the ANC will sugarcoat some of the pronouncements that they make based on the event. They will go to an event and based whether the president is there, there will be some form of sugarcoating. And here you've got an ex-president and a leader of the ANC who does not mince his words, irrespective of who is in attendance. And one can just celebrate such individuals, and not only for the sake of the ANC, but we all know a strong ANC is good for the country, because you don't want a ruling party that is weakened and which cannot at least deal with one fundamental aspect, and that is the aspect of delivering services to South Africans. And I think even opposition parties will agree to this particular factor. What really stood out for me, it was even the way Thabo Mbeki was delivering his speech. You could see that he comes from a position of almost sincerity. He had his flaws during his presidency. Everybody will have that sometime if you are in a leadership position. But I think currently the message that he was sending was that things cannot go on as they are on the same trajectory that we see that governance plans have been implemented, or whether they even exist.
Well, Professor, if you'll indulge me here a little, we have another soundbite from the former president that we'd like to play. Let's take a listen to what he had to say about the lack of plan that the ANC has. All right, it appears that we don't have that particular bite ready, but I just want to talk to that issue, Professor. You know, the former president criticizing the lack of a national plan to deal with persistent issues such as unemployment, poverty in this country. I mean, this is clearly an individual who is speaking truth to power. Some have viewed his remarks as exactly that. But that begs the question, to what end? You know, he's spoken truth to power, but to what end? We're already past the halfway mark when it comes to the year, and it does seem that the ANC's focus right now is on consolidating its power ahead of the December elected conference and ahead of the 2024 national election. So really, to what end has the former president stated what he said?
No, I strongly believe that he made some fundamental points that we need to pay attention to. If you look at, we've got a Department of Labor, but today we are grappling with the employment of foreign nationals. This is an issue that should never have been let up until, and that's why I say we are very reactive. And I am somebody who does not sometimes single out ministers, but if you look at Minister Motsoaledi when he was at the Department of Health, what he's currently doing now in securing our borders, he is doing a huge job. And we've got MEC Panyaza. I don't know, is it the case that he appears every time in the media, but these are people that exudes confidence, and I think they are earning trust for the government, and we need to celebrate them. But fact of the matter is we definitely lacking in terms of the plans are there. I don't think we don't have plans. We've got a 30-year national development plan, but the fact of the matter is, and then we're very good, and this is something that is widely known. South Africa as a country is very good in, coming up with these policies, but the fact of the matter is we lack when it comes in to implementation. South Africa is a lawless country. I know the Minister of Police will differ with me. You can't have a situation where people are murdered almost on a daily basis, yet we talk about a national crime fighting strategy. It's all these things that boils up, and I strongly believe that if we go back to basics, but one thing that we also need to start doing as South African citizens is to also play our role in not allowing certain things to happen in our communities.
Well, you're talking about the persistent pressures that South Africans are feeling, the lack of implementation as a result. And this is something that Mbeki referenced, but he referenced, the July unrest and that being the beginnings of what we saw happening with the Arab Spring. And I want to get your sense on that particular comment made by the former president. I mean, is the former president rather, stoking dangerous ideas by comparing the unrest that we saw last year to something as, impactful as the Arab Spring was? Professor?
Yeah, no, I thought you were going to play the sound bounce, so I didn't hear you on that one. No, for me, it is once again a sober assessment, but and this is one of my expertise, my field of specialization when it comes to protests and all that. You need a fertile ground for an Arab Spring to happen in any other country. I mean, if you look at the structural conditions, yes, issues of poverty and all that, but we've got a very diverse society which will not easily buy into this whole notion of, moving over into violent confrontation. But yes, there are factors that point to that, but I don't think we have yet reach that stage. You will get pockets of, communities, groupings that will perhaps have protests like your taxi associations, a non-governmental organization marching against the government. But I don't think we have yet reached the stage where we can expect something even close to the Arab Spring. But that's definitely, I mean, if you look at the high number of unemployment, crime in South Africa, and even if you look at the economy, people are battling financially. I mean, I've heard that several times, and even from high-ranking people, how tough it is to survive currently in South Africa. And those are issues that point to, dissatisfaction among South African citizens. But I don't think we have reached that stage because we've got a very diverse society. And people, some of them may be disgruntled, but I don't think they will join something perhaps where there has to be a violent onslaught on the government of the day.
Well, Professor, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to have you on the program. That's a political analyst, Professor Sethulego Matebesi.